long forgotten classics that deserve a second chance. A whole new audience for Medieval 2, the greatest game series you've never played. A sophisticated and nuanced political drama, stellar tactical JRPG gameplay, cute animals, engaging roleplaying, and vast well-designed worlds or a neo-noir medieval universe, hard to figure out, doesn't come with instructions, but has exceptionally high highs. If you like barely clothed female anime characters, cute animals, engaging roleplaying, and vast well-designed worlds chock full of interesting creatures, beautiful environments, and amazing world building, well then you should probably go outside and explore Japan. But if, like me, you don't like going outside, then the Tales series is for you. This series has lasted for over 20 years, but for me the classic titles that really define the modern Tales format that persisted to this day begin with the 3D era. The first entry in this era, Tales of Symphonia, best placed in the PS3 remastered format or PC port, combines perhaps the best story in the franchise with an engaging set of characters and challenging RPG combat. Now I can't say much about the story without spoiling it, but I can go into the combat. The action-based, multi-line linear motion battle system, as it's named, Jesus, that was a mouthful, that's what she said, was a system that was as challenging and thrilling as it is hard to say. It combines stellar live-action combat with RPG mechanics to form a complete package, and is one of the reasons why Tales of Symphonia, even to this day, still holds up. Now you might be wondering, why does it deserve a remaster if I've said it still holds up to this day and you can get it on PS3, you can get it on PC? Well, it's because any of the so-called remasters done, or the ports as I like to call them, which they really are, haven't updated the major issue with Tales of Symphonia, the graphics. Let's just say the remasters, as they are, leave much to be desired. Only if you're not interested in looking at Legos for 40 hours. But I think in many ways, because such a massive graphical leap is required, Tales of Abyss might be a better candidate for a remaster. You see, the 2006 PS3 title dramatically improves graphical fidelity, introduces a mysterious new world with great characters, in particular the main one, and improves on the Tales of Symphonia formula in pretty much every single way. And so I think in some ways you can make an argument for it being a better contender. Also, it's very difficult to find. There isn't a remaster, at least in the West, apart from the 3DS, and who has a 3DS anymore? Also, it wasn't very good. So otherwise, if you want to play the original version, the good version, the version that still holds up today, you'd have to go out of your way to get a PS2, then probably get one of those HD emulators. And so in many ways, it makes more sense for Square Enix to add a kind of HD graphics, Tales of Abyss, PS5 version, so that the rest of the world can still play this game and enjoy it. Want to experience the emotional highs and lows of a bright-eyed child exploring an uncharted world of mystery and wonder without TikTok? Well, play Dragon Quest. Now, there are a bunch of remaster contenders in this series, but I'll name two of my favorites to keep it simple. The first candidate is Dragon Quest IX. From its opening render of Overture to beautifully rendered world, the PS2 entry Dragon Quest IX has a way of creating a sophisticated but pure childlike wonder while providing the very compelling JRPG experience Dragon Quest fans expect. Now, it's not perfect, the grinding could be improved on, and I'd recommend finding some sort of online guide just to help you through it, but it's a must play and a brilliant candidate for a remaster because it's not available anywhere. There's the 3DS, as with Tales of Abyss, 3DS remaster, but who has a 3DS anymore? There's no way to get it on the PS3, on the PS4, on the PS5, and so I think it is a perfect candidate. And given their decent form with the Final Fantasy VII remaster, this might be the perfect time for Square Enix to give it a try. Might as well. But as I said, I'm not done here. I want to talk about Dragon Quest IX. Now, you see, Dragon Quest IX was one of the most popular releases internationally for the Dragon Quest series before the recent Dragon Quest XI. It combined stellar gameplay, a quite fascinating, dark and thrilling story that is not reminiscent of the very simple narrative Dragon Quest titles usually go with. It also had fantastic multiplayer that I remember very fondly from my childhood. It was very challenging. It wasn't an easy game to play like some of the recent entries where they're trying to target a more accessible way of approaching things. On top of that, it had a kind of amazing, distinctive visual style, even for the Dragon Quest series, with that Toriyama art style really working well on the DS. And so with all these factors mounting in its favor, I think it's a travesty that no one can play it. It literally is only on the DS. There was not even a 3DS master, at least in Europe and North America. There's been no PS3 port, no PS4 port, no PS5 port, no PC port. Current generations, despite it being the second most successful Dragon Quest title in North America and Europe, can't access it. And so if Square Enix wants to make a quick cash grab before the next Dragon Quest title, this is it. Come on. Oh, Morrowind, you're so difficult but so fascinating. The first thing any new player should know about it is that it's very old. And with that age comes an exceptionally high steep learning curve for new players and the jankiness you'd expect from a decade-old title. Because much like the real world, Morrowind is hard to figure out, doesn't come with instructions, but has exceptionally high highs. But that's what makes it great and fundamentally unique when compared to the checkpoint-based, navigational marker-based AAA games nowadays. Now, you might think I played Starfield, having no checkpoints, shitty maps is not necessarily the best thing. And I would agree with you to an extent, but Morrowind does it better, just trust me. And also, I do accept it can be a bit frustrating at times. It's not a perfect game. If you're interested in doing other things like spending time with your family, education, finances, health, then you probably shouldn't play Morrowind. And there's a reason many of the streamlined innovations to AAA gaming were introduced in the first place. But with talk of an Oblivion remaster on the horizon, I think Bethesda should look at giving Morrowind another chance. Perhaps revamp some of the rough edges, update the graphics. They could even take on some of the modding community. Modders have done a fantastic job adapting Morrowind for the modern age. They could take on some of that expertise, take on some of that design, apply it to a remaster, and see how it works. It's just worth a try. Come on. For me, Fire Emblem has always been a game in the purest sense. No lofty or sophisticated plot with interesting characters, twists, and a realized world. But if you want stellar tactical JRPG gameplay that is consistently challenging and stimulating without being repetitive, then you can't go wrong with Fire Emblem. And this definitely holds true for the 2000 entry to the series, Radiant Dawn. It won't dazzle the senses, nor will the story and characters leave a long-lasting impression, but you will remember your achievements when you beat that difficult level, after hours of failed attempts. It will stick with you decades later, and that's why I believe it deserves a remaster. Now, the next one I'm going to propose is a bit of an odd one. Not because the game is strange or weird or niche or terrible. It's because I haven't actually played it. I've only seen it and admired it. Directed by the guy responsible for the stylish opening of Final Fantasy XII, Vagrant Story amps up the ethereal beauty of FF12 without the aid of the more advanced graphics. And I don't know how, but the art style just managed to captivate me even to this day. Just look at this. If this doesn't captivate you, then nothing will. And on this basis, I don't even care if the gameplay is terrible, fix it. I don't care if anything else, I don't care if the story is awful, I don't care. We need a modern title with this aesthetic. I feel as though modern RPGs have somewhat lost the stylistic flair of games like Vagrant Story. Now, of course, you have a lot of amazing anime art. I'm not going to deny that, but it just doesn't match. But if you look at a game like Final Fantasy or the Tales of series or the Trails series, or Dragon Quest, or go down the list of popular RPGs, especially JRPGs, and none of them have that stylistic flair. That feeling as though you've been put into a neo-noir, medieval universe with a strong sense of identity, rhythm, and so just remaster it. Just do it. This series is a perfect example of never judging a book by its cover. If you can deal with a fair amount of cringe dialogue on the surface, then under it, you'll find a sophisticated and nuanced political drama with rewarding JRPG turn-based combat. A subset of the large, almost symphonic Trails series, the Trails in the Sky Trilogy is a must-buy. I can't say too much about the plot without spoiling all three titles, but all I can say, and almost guarantee, is that every entry sees a grander and more ambitious plot, and the core gameplay system is gradually improved. So you won't be disappointed. My only problem is the graphics. It's very outdated, almost off-puttingly so. It's a kind of combination of very simplistic 2D animations with a very low-resolution 3D world. It doesn't look great. It doesn't look up to scratch of the modern Trails of Cold Steel series. And so I believe there is a strong case for updating the entire trilogy in a single package and releasing it to current generations. The legendary, almost perfect Witcher 3 catapulted the series into the limelight, with multiple TV shows accompanying its success. And while 3 deserves its acclaim, so does its predecessor, The Witcher 2. The second game in the series introduces the sophisticated political intrigue, stunning world, murky characters, and Trice the successor will be known for. On top of all of this, it still holds up graphically to this day, representing a dramatic leap ahead of the potato heads of the first title. And you might be wondering, if I said it holds up graphically, the story is fantastic, and it's also widely available on PC, then why should it be remastered? Well, because of the gameplay, with notoriously janky combat, strange swings in difficulty that many have been put off it despite its otherwise brilliance, and so it would be a relatively easy job for CD Projekt Red to come in, update the combat to the Witcher 3 standards, maybe improve some textures, and release it as a new package to an entirely new audience. The Total War series is amazing. It combines thrilling army management, combat that engages the player in its vast tactical arena, and fully realized historical and now fantasy worlds with the Warhammer series. But one title that stands out to me the most, despite its age and in many ways anachronistic gameplay, is Medieval 2. I think if Creative Assembly applies the same principles they did to the Rome remaster, adding a few improvements to the core gameplay, improving the graphics a bit, removing some of the janky features, then they would find a whole new audience for Medieval 2. I'm going to explain why Inazuma 11 is the greatest game series you've never played. To do this, I need to go into a personal detour into my childhood. Like many young who spent their childhood in the DS era, I loved RPGs. Every waking moment of my free time was devoted to them. I tried to catch them all with Pokemon Platinum and Soul Silver and conquer every trial Dragon Quest IX's gargantuan story threw at me. But I didn't realize I hadn't seen everything yet, for Inazuma 11 completely transformed my world. At the time, I was also a massive football enthusiast. For an American audience, the game with the actual ball. And so, when I wasn't playing football during the school break times, I was playing FIFA or a boundless other variety of games, even Football Manager, which is massively underrated, but I'm not going to go into that. So you could imagine my excitement when I discovered Inazuma 11 combined football, RPG mechanics, and most importantly of all, was Japanese. Even more incredibly, they managed to integrate all these parts together fantastically well. Now you might be wondering, how have they done this? Why are you so enthusiastic? Are you mental? Well, I'll get onto that later. For now, we'll start with the story. The story follows generations of students at Raimon Academy as they face capitalists, aliens on Earth, aliens on space, and time travel. But let's not get into the weeds here. It doesn't matter. The story of all the games with the Japanese voice acting is reasonably fun, but to be honest, is mostly a sideshow if you're above the age of 5. Even as a kid, I didn't really care. You see, the magic of Inazuma 11 doesn't come from the story or the combat, but the overall package, from the varied landscapes and battle arenas to where it really shines, in its combat, skill, and experience system. You see, this is no ordinary football game. Inazuma 11 seeks to answer the question, why play football when you can play magical football? And this might sound stupid, but it works. Having such a complicated range of abilities with elemental weaknesses creates an aspect of challenge that motivates you to get through the main story and go even further. Now, the core gameplay loop of the main story is made up of a series of tactical battles with enemies. These funfests combine real-time tactical combat with what I can only describe as awesomeness. You might be thinking, that was the greatest audio-visual experience of my life, and I would agree, but it gets better. You see, when the story ends, there are extensive side competitions for the player to get involved in. These competitions may have the appearance of a grindy, tedious mess, but don't let this cover trick you. When you pick up the game, a magical force will tap into your hidden, relentless need for perfection and compel you to max out every tournament. You won't just be content with a completion. You'll want that S-Class certification. This is why I believe the Inazuma 11 1-3 trilogy deserves a Switch remaster. As with many of the titles here today, it's very difficult to find. At the moment, you can find the DS versions, there's a 3DS port, but who has the 3DS anymore? Who has a DS anymore? Everyone has transitioned over to the Switch, which has become one of Nintendo's best-selling consoles of all time. And so I think it's about time for this classic to be updated for the Switch era so that new generations can enjoy it the way I did as a child.